Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another Constitutional Considerations here on Tactical Review. Once again, joined by Elias of the Liberty Review podcast. Good evening, Elias. Welcome. How are you doing?
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm here. I had a bit of a crazy day. Shouldn't have been with, everything's supposed to be kind of a relaxed pace right now, right?
Yeah, good luck with that.
So, anyway, we've got in the chat already, we've got Brownies for My Fat, Randall Hill, and Warsaw Patriot. Good to see you guys. I was going to say not as impassioned of a show maybe this week as a couple weeks ago, but I don't know that I can make that promise because we are once again...
You just never know.
Well, we're once again going to be talking about where tyrants in our government want to trample on our rights. And we're going to actually this week look a little bit to some of our neighbors and look at the ways that their rights have been trampled and are going to continue to be trampled, and that makes me angry for them. So we'll see. We might end up spitting and frothing, and I'll have foam going in the beard and everything. Oh, so where are we going to start? I feel like, Elias, you weren't here last week. I made a promise to these good folks. When I hit 500 subscribers, I'm giving away 2 guns.
You say 500 or 5,000?
I said 500.
Uh-oh. So
anyway,
well, good thing you got your stimulus then, huh?
Right. My good old Trump bucks. So let's just dig right in.
All right.
Story posted just yesterday on Ammo Land News. Now, you guys at home may not have known this, but Crazy Uncle Joe, he's not much of a fan of guns, unless it's a double-barrel shotgun. So if you haven't taken the opportunity to go over and check out his campaign website, I don't know that I can say I recommend it, but yeah, he's just kind of got his whole agenda laid out there. So let's go through some highlights, and we're going to talk about how asinine some of these are. We just got a nice bullet list here. Put America on the path to ensuring that 100% of firearms sold in America are smart guns.
See, that one just made me laugh because as I think about all the smart things we have today, the last thing I want is a smart gun. My concern is that, instead of just rebooting, it'll just randomly start shooting. And then they'll actually be right. Those guns will be dangerous finally.
Right. Well, there's, I think it's Massachusetts. I won't swear that it's Massachusetts, but one of the northeastern states has a law on the books that as soon as smart guns are introduced for sale, 100% of guns sold in that state have to be smart guns. So, but here's the thing is that, imagine Windows Gun Edition. Oh, that was you. Hey, look at that. I can read. No, I can't. That makes me think of Windows Millennium Edition, and that was
the point.
That was
Windows GE.
But no, here's the thing. I've got a OnePlus 6T, which sounds like an algebra equation, not a cell phone, but whatever. Big fan of the OnePlus phones, and by and large, it's been a really good phone. But it has an in-glass fingerprint reader. And again, by and large, it works great. But every now and again, it just absolutely refuses to unlock for me. And I end up having to put in my pattern instead of using the fingerprint scanner. Is that what we really want on our defensive firearms?
Actually, not what we want. It's what they would want, because as you were talking about that, I realized it's not so much meant to do anything for you. It's so that they can go ahead and upload that stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Okay, it's one of those things. Number one, they don't exist outside of like James Bond and sci-fi. But the anti-gunners are 100% convinced that this is real technology that exists right now. And then they get so angry because it's not being sold. It's because it doesn't exist.
Also, the market is not going to want it.
But,
and they're driven by the market. The market's not going to want it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the thing is that there's just, on the surface, I can see where they would want to think it's a good idea. Okay, if we attribute no malicious intention to this claim of wanting smart guns, okay, which I don't believe, but let's play devil's advocate here. So the idea is that even if somebody disarmed a police officer, for instance, they couldn't use that police officer's own weapon on them. And that's a thing that's happened. Happened to the first female officer in the Chattanooga Police Department, as a matter of fact, back in, I think, the 80s or 90s. Or let's say one of the number one ways that criminals get firearms, because we all know that criminals follow all the gun laws, is by stealing them from a law-abiding citizen. Well, the idea there is that once the weapon is coded to the owner, that a criminal could not steal it and then use it in the commission of a crime. But what about if right now, if I'm out of the house and somebody were to break in, my wife has access to the firearms in the house to protect herself and the kids.
Right.
How many authorized users would be allowed on these smart guns? What about, of course, they want to do away with these too, and I'm sure that we'll get to this in the list. What about private party sales? That would do away with that by de facto, because
and they've been wanting to do that for years, so that's not really surprising.
Oh.
Because if you had to go through an FFL, I'm sure the FFL is the one who can reprogram it or something.
Right. It'd be like coding a new key to my Mini Cooper to where you'd have to go to the dealer. So
right, but it would work probably even worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I saw Warsaw Patriot said probably wouldn't be waterproof. So God help you if it's raining.
I know the Glocks might be.
Well, and that is something. I mean, let's face it. Somebody can grab a new iPhone and take it in the hot tub and whatever now, but.
Right.
But then again, an iPhone's only guaranteed waterproof until it has to be worked on one time. So.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so. Biden's next item on his wish list is to end the online sale of firearms and ammunition, which what does it matter if you can?
I don't understand the point of that, because it's not like it's showing up in FedEx, in a FedEx box to your house.
I mean,
it's still going through an FFL, who still has to do a background check, who still has to do everything. So the difference is, instead of going into the guy's shop and buying it, you're just getting it from wherever you want to, and then putting a middleman.
Right.
So I'm not really sure what his point of this is.
Right. I mean, the one thing is, I don't know. I am your typical consumer. I see the concept of the ammunition, But that really aggravates me because I'm a comparison shopper, and like places like SG Ammo and stuff.
Yep.
It doesn't bother me.
But it doesn't. Right, but it doesn't change anything because honestly, you can drive down to the guy here in town and still get the exact same ammo. It might be costlier, but you're still gonna be able to get it. And if
Right.
you wanted to, you're still gonna get it. Not being online isn't gonna stop you. But as Warsaw Patriot just pointed out, he doesn't know how to buy a gun, and that's what happens with a lot of these guys. They honestly do believe that you can just walk into a gun show, say, "Give me that one," and walk out with it immediately.
Right.
They probably do believe that yes, you can order it online, and UPS is going to deliver it to you.
Right.
They don't actually understand how any of that stuff works.
And then they have all of their multitudes who believe that, and then all of a sudden these people feel are in fear of their lives, and then you have situations like we are dealing with right now, where all of these former anti-gunners are very distraught to find out that that's not how the real world works.
Yeah, that what they've been told and what they've been fed for years isn't the truth. And I wonder, the disappointing part is that won't change their mind, though. Even though they know that it's not true, they'll still keep voting for the people who say it because...
Right.
I don't know.
Virtue signaling?
Won't somebody think of the children?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I hate that. I
Won't somebody think of the children?
hate that. So much evil has been perpetrated in the history of mankind for the good of the children. Really, really, really irritating.
You ever notice that what's good for the children is actually really opposite of what's really good for the children?
Right? Okay, next item.
Brainwashed.
Ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. So, first things first, what constitutes a high-capacity magazine? I mean...
something with 100 clips in it.
Right, a magazine that can hold 100 clips. Isn't that called a belt? Like, M27 links? I don't know.
I don't know what was going through his mind when he said it, so...
But, it's funny because it's this arbitrary number. In some places it's 10 rounds. In some places it's 15 rounds. In some places it's 9 rounds. That's one thing I loved about, well, Mr. Guns and Gear's Facebook page, may it rest in peace. That's something we'll probably talk about. I forgot to put it on the set list, but anyway. But one thing I loved is whenever, it didn't matter what size magazine he found on sale, it was a standard capacity magazine. Did he find 75 round Romanian AK drums? 75 round standard capacity magazines. I love the fact that he did that. And somebody asked him about that once, and he said, well, if any firearm has ever been sold with this magazine in the box, it's a standard capacity magazine for that firearm. Like, I love it.
Oh.
His whole point is to normalize this stuff that people are trying to demonize. So, and then again, once again, the assault weapons. It says, this time the bans will be designed based on lessons learned from the 1994 bans, which, by the way, FBI crime statistics proved were 100% useless. But
yeah, the ban was useless. Newsflash: criminals still got held guns.
Here's the one that really starts making me very angry. Regulate the possession of existing assault weapons under the NFA. Well, first of all, the NFA is illegal and unconstitutional. It just needs repealed. And then he wants to buy back assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And Joe, I didn't buy any of my assault weapons from you. You can't buy back that which you never owned.
Yeah, he listened to Beto too much.
Yeah, and then reinstate the Obama-Biden policy to keep guns out of the hands of certain people unable to manage their affairs for mental reasons.
Which was the reason it got reversed was because it was extremely vague.
Right. It ended up being, it kind of ended up targeting veterans, and specifically veterans who are having a hard time with job placement because of their veteran status. All right. Oh, Randall Hill, that's a good point. Obviously, the criminals are going to have smart guns. So, brainwashed. Clip is like a stripper clip. Yep. Brownies of the clipazine. Oh. Randall, I didn't see that. Jerry Mitchell X video where he taped together a clipazine. Oh. So, anyway, yeah. Obviously, once again, we all knew that Crazy Uncle Joe is anti-gunner. We also know that he doesn't work for us. That's what he told the fella up in Michigan. So, that's something that everybody needs to remember come November. Not that the folks who are likely to be watching anything on my channel would really be much considering Crazy Uncle Joe come election time. It's funny that the number of staunch Democrats that I have seen already post that I don't know if I'm going to vote for Trump or write in a third party, but I cannot vote for Biden. The dude's got early, or he's in early stages of dementia.
I really thought that the DNC was going to learn from 2016, but they didn't. They did not learn that they didn't learn their lesson from the last election.
So, yeah, Warsaw, we are going to touch on what some of the stuff that we are seeing coming out of Maryland. We're going to have that towards the end. It's not in depth this week, but yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. Everybody, never forget his name was Duncan Lemp. So we will get back to that point, I promise you. We're starting out on some national issues first. Okay, next up, y'all have another one that you need to be reaching out to your representatives. House Resolution 6318 is the Urban Progress Act.
That's just, yeah. HR 6318.
So definitely, I don't know if there's an action link on that. I probably should have looked that up. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to start seeing if there's an action link to help everybody quickly contact their elected officials. And Elias, why don't you walk us through this wonderful steaming pile of fecal matter?
So HR 6318, that wonderful bill, it is an omnibus bill, which I told you earlier I hate omnibus bills. Omnibus bills are pretty much, let's throw a whole bunch of crap into this and hopefully we'll see what sticks. And instead of being something that's focused on one thing, gets a whole bunch of different things. For instance, this one has things in there for rental assistance, housing, promoting startups, youth summer jobs, child poverty, what is it? Stuff for National Academy of Sciences, community policing. And then they've got way buried down in here the quote-unquote common sense gun violence prevention, which is anything but. Pretty much what it is a bill that's going to just put in the same things that are already in against the law. Interstate trafficking, things like that. That stuff's already illegal on the federal level. So it's just kind of rehashing that, but I don't know how much that's meant to kind of bury some of the other stuff in it. They want a report on the effects of gun violence in the public health. Well, I'm pretty sure CDC already does that, but they want to do it. They want the Surgeon General to give an annual report on, quote-unquote, the effects on public health of gun violence in the United States and the status of actions taken to address such effects, but it doesn't really say why. And then a whole bunch of pretty much, again, we're going to get into the whole, I think, where was it I read to you earlier? it was about who should and shouldn't have a gun. It has to do with mental defect, and it was very, very vague as to what could qualify. All it said is if a judge has said that these people are supposed to have medication or whatever. It's vague. But what's funny, I think, is that there's loopholes already in it, such as you're allowed to let somebody borrow it for target shooting at a range. You're allowed to let somebody borrow it to go hunting. You're allowed to allow somebody to borrow it, you know, for these temporary transfers is what they were calling it. So I really am not sure what it is they're trying to do here. Obviously, they're going to make it easier, unless they are trying to codify what Biden was talking about with what him and Obama did that Trump reversed. That's the only thing I can think of, is trying to codify it in law so that the president can't just stop it. But it's very vague, and it doesn't make any sense why you're going to do it, and it's most likely going to lead to people who shouldn't have their rights touched.
So I hear a lot of things that will probably negatively impact law-abiding citizens.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything in there about how they're going to target this at actual criminals?
No, there's nothing in there. It has nothing to do with criminals. No. It has nothing to do with, I mean, yeah. That's why I said it doesn't make any sense, because they're not actually affecting anything to do with criminals. They're dealing with people who a judge has decided that they're mentally defective. Not that a doctor has, or a doctor has said anything. I'm sure it can lead to that, but it really doesn't make any sense.
Well, and that's, you know, that's the thing, is that you mentioned how vague it is. Obviously, we all know that they do that on purpose. That way, later on, they can twist it and say, oh, no, it definitely applies to this, when the application would be tenuous at best. But because it's so vague, it's just easy to, you know, hunts for life. I like that. Maybe if they have medication, like drug issues or alcohol issues, it should be illegal to drive while under the influence. I like that. And while we're at it, maybe we should just make it illegal to murder people, and then murder rate would drop to 0 overnight. It's just perfect.
Seems legit.
Yeah.
How's that drug war working out for them?
Well, basically, I think they're figuring out that they can claim it a victory if they just make them legal and tax it. That seems to be...
I mean, to be fair, the drug war was a proxy war anyway, but that's a whole different story for another day. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Warsaw. That's true. He's talking about how many millions of children die by abortion, but the thing is that, you know, they to people who, boy, this gets into a gray area that well, it's not gray. To me, it's black and white. 100% life starts at conception. Okay, so that's my stance, and I unapologetically but most people who are pro-choice, to them, they're just so fluid on when life starts.
Well, they have two different aspects of it. One is either they'll sit there and say that life doesn't start until birth, or they'll say the heartbeat, or they'll say all these different things. But what they'll also say is then they justify by saying, well, you know, yes, it's alive, because now they've realized they can't have that argument anymore if it's not alive. That was the argument for the longest time. But we can tell that the baby is alive, right. You know, between grasping doctors' fingers during neonatal surgeries to reacting to pain and things like it's inside her body. So therefore, they're trying to appeal to the more libertarian side of my rights, right. My individual rights.
Right. So. Here's the thing, though, is that baby as an individual has rights as well. I mean, and
that's where exactly.
I'm callous, yep. Or I'm considered callous, because my thought is that the choice that was had was whether or not to engage in intercourse.
Right, and that's where my belief is that child did not decide.
Right.
To be conceived. You decided through your own actions. And again, you know, I'm not going to go into this because I think this can also really, really temper up flares. Oh, yeah. Flare up tempers. I can't speak tonight. But I will say there is I will say there is a difference between medical necessity and doing it because you, well, to be quite frank, can't keep your legs crossed.
Right.
There is a huge difference in that, and I am only talking about the ones that it is just casual.
Right.
That's their form of birth control. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Let's.
But here's so go back to this bill. Here's the good thing, and I think the really funny part. This bill was introduced a month ago, 323. Not even one co-sponsor. She can't even get one other Democrat to co-sponsor this thing with her. So,
that's good news. Well,
I think that's pretty bad when you can't even get. I mean, and we've had a lot of Democrats. To their credit, to those particular Democrats' credit, in the last year, the last late 2019, they tried an assault weapons ban, and they couldn't even get all the Democrats on board because they told them it was stupid.
Well, and here's something else is that
so
when we set a record number of NICS requests last month by like a million background checks.
Yeah.
Of all of the years to make your platform gun control, it seems like 2020 is not the one. You know.
Yeah, that's probably
so. Yeah, across the board.
Yeah, I wish you the best of luck, but that's the worst part is it's going to waste a whole bunch of people's times. And I'm not talking about the congressmen. I really don't care about them. I'm talking about the aides and the people that are actually doing the work.
Right.
It's going to waste a lot of their times having to deal with these bills. But that's the good part is I don't think they're going anywhere. If they can't even get, doesn't mean don't call.
Right.
It just,
that
little sigh of relief of she can't even get anybody to join in with her on this one.
Yeah, now didn't that say that was submitted to like 9 subcommittees trying to get it to stick?
Yes, because it's an omnibus bill.
Right.
So within that bill, there are some things go over here. There's one, like for instance, it goes to Ways and Means because they have to figure out how to fund it. It goes to small business because there's provision in there for startups. It goes to education and labor and stuff like that because of like I was saying, there's something in there about community colleges and careers because it's a huge, massive pain in the.
It's so stupid. Look, guys, here's the thing. I work in IT as my day job, and I am a huge fan of like kind of one purpose,
Yes.
single tasking kind of. Now, and I understand this gets a little off course. When you've got a licensed software, sometimes it makes sense. But by and large, with virtualization and stuff, for instance, when I need a new server to do something, I just spin up a new server, throw Linux on it if it's there and if it functions well for that. I mean, again, I'm not saying that, this is an illustration and they always break down if you look at them too closely. Anyway, big fan of, we've got one goal here, let's do this. That's why when I saw that they were trying to shoehorn gun control crap into another stimulus bill, look, whether or not you agree with stimulus packages or not, whether or not you think that's not where gun control, anything that doesn't have to do with actually trying to help people in this time of difficulty doesn't belong in a bill for helping people in this time of difficulty. And that's
right. Bills should only deal with one thing.
Let's see. Even if they tried to ban any type of gun and confiscate them, it'd be like picking up a small speck. Oh yeah, Warsaw, you're absolutely right. Because there's nobody knows how many firearms. At a conservative estimate, those scary AR-15s, I'd guess that there's probably 30 million AR-15s in the United States. Just on a guess, based from approximate percentages sold and approximate number of guns in the United States, and that's not AKs, that's not SETMEs, that's not FOWLs, that's not any of these other assault weapons. That's just the AR-15. yeah, for them to try to confiscate it, and the thing is that all of the law enforcement officers, peacekeeping officers, whatever we want to call them, all of the police and sheriff's deputies that I've talked to, whenever I've asked them about, like, so what if they told you to go confiscate? They're like, that's how you get dead. That's and again, rural America. I realize that there's absolutely stormtroopers and Gestapos who would more than happily kick down doors to take. I get that.
Oh, yeah.
That was 2 weeks ago's discussion. We're not really this one, but yeah.
No, they're out. Thankfully, there's a lot more.
But hey,
rednecks and people in flyover country.
Oh yeah. Speaking.
And here, and then there, you're not gonna get the guns. So.
Speaking of AR-15s, because they're scary. According to a federal judge who is, gosh, how's this work? The district court that includes Nevada. There we go. According to this judge, AR-15s are already machine guns, though. Link in the chat, but basically, this has to do with the whole bump stock ban or bump stock type devices. So the ATF's problem with bump stocks is, number one, they hate puppies, and number two, it easily converts a weapon to fully automatic fire. Now, I've not played with a bump stock, but I've watched videos where people have, and I know the concept. Try as I may, I have never successfully intentionally bump fired a weapon using the belt loop method, using a loose hold. I've tried, I've not been able to figure out the tempo. And from what I've seen in videos, even using bump stocks back when they were a thing you could just have, they only made it marginally easier. It wasn't ever reliable. We're not talking the same thing as a select fire AR-15, where reliably you flip the switch and you die mofo die.
Well, and even then it's only 3. I mean, I understand their definition is more than one bullet, but still, then it's only 3
well, no,
shots that go out.
That depends on what generation.
Right, but that was but they did it on purpose, because what they found was it was extremely inefficient to do any more than that.
Right. Now if we want to get into, boy, that's a fun technical discussion, because the military has actually gone away from 3-round burst in the M4A1s and the M16A4s, because what they figured out, the mechanism that limited it to only 3 rounds was causing some issues. Whether it was, I don't remember if it was trigger feel, I don't remember, but they've actually gone back to it's fully automatic again, and they're teaching trigger control.
I didn't get to do that. I got to play with 3-round.
Right.
That was fun. But
right. So what they're teaching now is it's actually basically die mofo die, let off, and that's about 3 rounds. So a 3 to 4 round burst is da 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 da, and they're teaching trigger, which is actually the better way to do it anyway, because you're teaching muscle memory instead of just teaching somebody to squeeze and rely on a mechanical linkage. Anyway, that's off the topic of this discussion.
Well, you got to remember when they started doing that, partly was because of the time that what the U.S. was going through. There wasn't a lot of training. It was get people out the door immediately. So now they have a little bit more time to train them properly.
Right. Poor conservative, welcome to the stream, and he wants to remind us all that bump firing is a bedroom activity.
So here's the thing I think is funny. When you actually read this judge's thing, and he talks about the fact that this is classified as a machine gun because the design and blah 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 blah, simple modifications. Well, in that case, I mean, my Glock should be considered
Well, that's
because it doesn't take much of a modification on some Glocks to make them fully automatic.
it's there's a sear that you put in the back plate, and
It's ridiculously easy. So by
you
his
can
definition,
3D print the parts. Absolutely. I see that Brastard's joined us as well. He said he can get bump fire going pretty good on the AKs, but when you're bump firing, he pointed out that it's not the same as actually having a select fire where you can get behind the sights.
It has its place.
So,
but for what most of us do, besides being a little bit of fun, it doesn't really. Whether you're talking about defense in the situations that we're in, it doesn't make much sense to use it anyway. So, that's just a stupid
once again
thing on the Nevada part.
My understanding, having not served at all, let alone in any kind of infantry role, but my understanding is that the vast majority of ground troops never utilize anything above semi-auto anyway, because if they need suppressive fire, that's what the 249 or a 240 is for. And the fact of the matter is, if you go and watch Iraq veterans meltdown videos, if you sustain full auto fire on most of your typical AR-15s, you're going to pop the you're gonna pop your gas tube in under 1,000 rounds. Now, that's a lot of mag changes, don't get me wrong, but if you think that you're going to rely on an AR-15 for sustained full auto fire, you're sadly mistaken. That's not what it's made for, and and Brastard, I understand full auto has its place. I'm not saying, because obviously if it didn't, we would have had...
Right, it's just in a M4, M16, AR-15, that's not really the place for it. It can be done. It's just, it's not an efficient use of the weapon at that point.
So,
use the tool the way it's meant to be used.
Hunts for Life, I'm actually very interested in a Fostech Echo. I know they've got a slightly cheaper one that it has the little Echo switch down on the trigger, or like up in the, I don't remember exactly how it works. I would rather have the slightly more expensive one that gives you a third, the binary position on the selector. Number one, for the slightly more authenticity of it. Number two, just so I don't have crap in my trigger guard. I'm depending on, I know that the fight is still very heavy about bump stocks right now. If it doesn't get shouted down somewhere along the way, I definitely foresee binary triggers are going to find their way on the they're going to be labeled a machine gun, and then because they were produced after 1986, then they're going to be illegal because the machine gun registry is closed. I said that a couple months ago. I said that when the NFA decided to do their in run on the Fostech Origin SPV and on the Franklin Armory Reclamation. The thing is, I mean, those are the two companies that are making the binary triggers, and they're already in the crosshairs of the ATF. So, yeah. All right. Well, while we're on the subject of petty tyrants at state levels, let's talk about HIPAA violations. What do you say?
That with the case you're about to talk about, they really need to appeal that because that's still a federal violation.
Well, let me go ahead and drop this link for you guys. And the too long didn't read is that in McHenry County, there we go, Illinois, the health department, no, the police were demanding the names of all positive tested COVID-19 patients. The health department rightly refused that information, and the McHenry County State Attorney Office, okay, is it county or state? Regardless, they sued the health department to begin supplying those names to local law enforcement, and the judge backed that. So,
yeah, and I mean, this is some county judge that hopefully will lose his job in the next election.
Yeah, this is so. Yeah, that's.
I have a feeling once that gets to the state level, would hope that the state level is smart enough that their courthouse. You never know.
Yeah, let's face it. We've been here in Indiana. We call that the People's Republic of Illinois. So, and that feels like a very Soviet thing to do.
Unfortunately, well, and that's the thing is, like, I'm not really sure. I mean, I know where Illinois stands in a lot of things. What I don't know is where they stand on things of privacy like that. And that's one of those really tough things. You know, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this, where it's kind of hard because there are actually a lot of people on the left side, even the far left, that are rightly against things like Rehab Act and fees and stuff like that, because they see it as a violation of privacy. So this is one of those where that might actually come into play, and that's what I'm hoping. If not, then it needs to be taken to a federal level, or it may just get taken to a federal level right away because it's a federal violation. So either way, hopefully it gets into the hands of a judge that, you know, doesn't lack common sense.
Here's what I'm hoping is that not only does the health department try to run that up the legal pathways, but if I had a family member in Illinois whose information was divulged without their permission, I would recommend them taking suit, because that's a HIPAA violation.
Yeah, that's a violation of the law, and there's no constitutional avenue that allows that that can sit there and say that somehow it's constitutional to require that, or it's unconstitutional to deny that. So, yeah, hopefully they either get this into the hands. Well, either way, hopefully they get into the hands of a judge that actually knows what he's talking about.
Well, and that's the thing, is because this goes back to the whole guilty until proven innocent. Because what they're doing there is that they are presupposing that these people who have been diagnosed with this disease that could potentially spread and kill, that, oh, well, so now we've got to watch them because they're going to go out and infect other people. Well, so you're just assuming that they're going to do things that are malfeasant against their fellow Americans. So,
we'll see what happens. Hopefully, that judge gets smacked around a little bit.
And speaking of course, New Mexico famously just went full on tyranny. Governor Grissom declared gun stores and ranges to be non-essential and closed all that down, despite what the federal ruling on it was. So one Albuquerque gun shop said that they had enough of it, and Calibers in Albuquerque has, as of last week, had decided to go ahead and reopen. They were going to follow the recommendations for social distancing in their store and cleaning high-touch surfaces, and in the range they were going to do every other bay. But yeah, I'm interested. I haven't seen an update on that. Interested to see how that's going. As a matter of fact, you know, so where does this fall on the spectrum, do you think, Elias? Because a state governor does in fact have the authorization to close down businesses during a state of emergency. The federal recommendation was that
They-
gun stores be considered essential. So, I know my personal
So-
feelings.
Here's where you get into the idea of what we were talking about before the show of the consent of the governed. From a legal standpoint, I don't know New Mexico law well enough, but assuming that they can sit there and say as a business decision that they can close it, sure. It was a federal recommendation, not a requirement. However, consent to the governed. And if the governed don't consent to it, then it's probably time for them to start taking action, which is what it looks like they're doing there. By just saying, okay, we're just going to open up. And if it comes, then we'll fight this one in court and see who wins.
Now, Brownie said law enforcement only. So I'm reading through on you.
It might be the store. The store said law enforcement only.
Yeah,
I'm
and
guessing.
if that's the case, then I'm going to be very aggravated. Here's another story, more recent from USA Carry. So I am scanning through this. Braster has pointed out that the governor actually, that's interesting, voted to arm child rapist terrorist in Syria in 2013, which makes her, I'd say guilty by association. I mean, unfortunately, the United States has more than once armed allies of circumstance, but
see, I will say though, the issue I have, from a practical standpoint, where it says we're going to take this fight back to her. We feel that unless somehow she got a magical power to take the Second Amendment out of our Constitution. Well, first of all, I don't really like using the U.S. Constitution to apply to the states. However, we can argue that the New Mexico Constitution has the same thing. And this is one of those things where it becomes that really weird, the hill to die on. The New Mexico governor hasn't said people can't still have their guns. The New Mexico governor hasn't said that people can't still order online.
Right.
We were talking about with Biden, as long as Biden isn't president, apparently, that you can't order online, have it shipped to an FFL, and you get it. She's just decided that the gun stores fall into a category, the same category as Macy's. They don't need to be open right now. And so it's one of those things where it's like, however, if the government don't consent to it, then, there's that kind of thing of there's may be time for a little pushback, a little bit of suing, and to kind of get the her to go back. But I think it's wrong to call it a Second Amendment violation in all reality. And I'm perfectly fine with people disagreeing with me on that one. I think this falls into that category of opinion. But I don't think that she's necessarily violating the Second Amendment so much as maybe deciding that she knows better for her state than the federal guidelines. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. I'm not going to really talk about her in general, but that's kind of my thought on it. Is I don't really think it's a violation of anybody's rights to own a gun, to have a gun, to do what they need to. But at the same time, if the store doesn't like it, then that's also their right to challenge it. That's their right to fight against it. That's the way our system was set up, and I think that is good for them to do.
And now I'm going to take kind of the other side of that is, as long as the store owner is abiding by the same policies that are in place for like grocery stores, given the fact that firearms and ammunition have been deemed to fall under essential, however you procure them, that if a grocery store is allowed to be open, if they haven't had to switch to only home delivery of groceries, then other essential, because the governor says her problem is, well, I don't think that places should be allowed to be open where people can congregate. But if the store is saying, no, you can, we're only going to allow 20 people in here because that's all the more that'll fit with proper distancing, and we're going to wipe down these these high touch surfaces and stuff. And the other thing is what are New Mexico's laws? Is New Mexico a state where you can have ammunition shipped direct to your house? Because if it's not, I don't think any place has gone as off the deep end as California, but if you can't have it shipped to your home in New Mexico, then by closing down gun stores as non-essential, you have limited access to that. So,
right, and that's why I said I can kind of go either way. I do think calling it out as a Second Amendment violation.
And the other thing is,
I understand it. It's the popular thing to do now, but I was like, go look at your state constitution. Stop. Where all we're doing is encouraging the federal government that they run everything.
Of course,
by doing
the
that.
next question is how many of us, like I will say I'm pro 2A, I could not rattle off for you Indiana's right to keep and bear statute number or anything, because it's so much easier just to say, well, the Second Amendment, because it's the Bill of Rights. And I think most people, I don't want the federal government involved anymore. I don't want them involved as much as they are.
Right.
But
which is fine. It's just that when it comes to a state thing, the problem is that the only reason that we apply the First Amendment and all these other ones to the states, for instance, if the state you're in used to have school prayer, but because the federal judges have said they're not allowed to, is because of they're kind of twisting the 14th Amendment to now apply the Bill of Rights to everywhere, where that wasn't the original intent. So the anti-federalist in me wants to say, go look at your state constitution, quit giving the federal government more power. Now, when the federal government does it, like Biden's attempt, that's definitely a Second Amendment violation. But almost every state, not every state, almost every state has a something like the Second Amendment.
Keep and bear arms.
Yeah, not every state, but almost every state.
Yeah, and Brastard was saying that until Governor Grisham, I don't know, New Mexico was one of the most pro-2A states. And again, a big part of the problem that New Mexico is facing right now is Californians who no longer like the laws that they voted in, and yet don't seem to understand that they're the cause of these laws, and now they're moving to neighboring states and voting for the same kind of crap. So I get that.
I'm really hoping that kind of opens up some eyes in California. I have my doubts, but we can all
ideally
hope and dream.
Ideally. Yeah, and Braster, that's the thing is that we need to, we the people need to remember what Elias has been saying all evening long: consent of the governed. And if we don't consent, then we don't comply. And mass, I'm going to say ideally peaceful non-compliance gets results. Mm-hmm. Let's look at what happened in Michigan last week. That was pretty incredible. I mean, yeah, was it disruptive? Absolutely. But were most of the
protests are going to be disruptive? Disruptive. That's the point.
Exactly. And yet everybody, by staying in their vehicles, complied with the letter of the law, if not the spirit of the law, and opened eyes nationwide. And as a matter of fact, there has been a Michigan bill introduced that's House Bill 5706, and I'm just going to drop a PDF of the text of the bill. And
see, in this kind of thing, the bill you're about to put, if New Mexico had something like that in effect, then that's one of those things that would be a clear thing of she wouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
Which is what Michigan is trying now. So
this has been introduced by Representative Stephen Johnson and referred to the Committee on Military Veterans and Homeland Security. And this is an amendment, basically, to a law that's on the books, Section 5, MCL 30.405. And if you're looking at the text, the relevant parts are on page 3. It's actually really clear and concise, says what rights the governor does have in declaring a state of emergency. And then this does not authorize the following: the seizure, taking, or confiscation of lawfully possessed firearms or ammunition. And as far as I'm aware, that wasn't attempted. Any Michiganders, right?
Not yet.
But B, banning the sale or purchase of firearms or ammunition. And then any person who willfully disobeys the implementation of this is, any person who willfully disobeys or interferes with the implementation of a rule, order, or directive issued by the governor under this section is guilty of a misdemeanor. So that...
And really the only person that could be that person is the governor. So this is meant to allow for an impersonation, because the governor would have to be the one ordering it done.
Well, is this saying, though, that if there's a state of emergency in effect and a person... Because like it says, the governor does have the right to suspend or limit the sale, dispensing, or transportation of alcohol, explosives, or combustibles. So is that saying that...
Yeah. Never mind. I'm an idiot. It's saying that somebody who doesn't... I thought it was still belonging to that same subsection, but it doesn't. It's just saying whoever doesn't listen to him. But the fact is, it does ban the governor from...
I would love to see it then add the verbiage that if the governor attempts to violate this directive in the implementation of a state of emergency, that the state of emergency or the governor's orders are null and void, and the governor is guilty of a misdemeanor. I mean,
I think the reason they don't is because they know the governor.
Well, that's a
won't
good
sign
point, because it's got, and
they're not going to have the votes to overturn it, assuming Michigan can overturn vetoes. So that's probably why. But it does. So he's got a bill in here that gives the governor a lot of power, which is going to make it enticing, and all it does is stop the governor from doing one thing. So this is one of those that it's more likely the governor will sign off on it, because there's a lot of good in there.
Brastard, you make a really good point. The need to stop new laws before they turn out like the NFA. There's a lot of stuff that either it has teeth and it's not enforced, or it has when it's first passed, it's kind of vague and doesn't really have teeth, but they can definitely add teeth into it. And that's why, we live in an unprecedented time for being able to get this information out. And that's why I even though I started this channel, my goal was to be as apolitical as possible, and now every Wednesday it's all politics.
Yeah, I remember this show was supposed to be
but the fact of the matter is that you guys can see I'm dropping links from other news sources. I'm not going out and going to, I'm not pulling every bill that goes across every place. Obviously, I will share links to Guns and Gadgets. I will share links to Mr. Guns and Gear. Because the more people who are trying to tell everybody these things, the more ears and eyes that it gets in front of, the more voters can reach out to their elected officials and say, no, put the brakes on this crap. I really think that it's an unprecedented time, but the flip side is I feel safe in saying that we have an unprecedented disinterest in the civics and political mechanisms of our country. We are also instant gratification, and I'm guilty. My hand's up here. We want to take the path of least resistance, and we're fine with the status quo, because even as things are getting a little dicey, this is still easily the best country on earth, and blah blah blah, and God bless the USA, and so we're just, the generic we are just happy to let it proceed how it proceeds. And we've really got to shake ourselves awake, because there's a whole lot of slippery slopes that
And it's what the government wants, and that's the reason why. Because when it's like this, they are able to slowly but surely kind of take more and more
Right.
power. So, um, we're the only one that can stop it.
And hey,
So,
this is a really good segue into a tragedy, admittedly, absolutely a tragedy, that it just occurred to our neighbors to the north up in Nova Scotia. There was this dude was unhinged. If you guys read through the article that I dropped, right now, the Canadian Mounted Police are saying that they think that at this point there are 22 victims that they've confirmed. I think 16 or 18 were shot. Correct. Poor conservative, a segue, not like the scooter, who ironically the creator rode one off of the edge of a cliff by leaning the wrong way. Anyway. No, anyhow, this shooting that occurred up in Nova Scotia, this individual, when he painted up his car to look like a police car. He was wearing a police uniform. He was going around burning down houses. Okay, of the 22 confirmed dead so far, two-thirds? Yeah, that's probably about right. Two-thirds were killed using a firearm. Now, firearms are already highly regulated in Canada. Yeah, their laws are really, really weird. I've watched a couple of Demolition Ranch videos where Matt and Mare have gone up to Canada, and what is legal and what isn't legal it's so convoluted. And anyway, but it's super highly regulated, and yet they couldn't prevent this tragedy. And unfortunately, I called this when I first was linked to the story. Elias, I think you sent me the first link that I saw to this. I knew that what they were going to do was use this to cry for more gun control. And sure enough, today, that's what the headlines are saying, is that they're pushing for more gun control, because that obviously helped in the first place. But secondly, all right, let's start breaking this down. For one thing, 1/3 of his victims he immolated by setting their houses on fire. How would gun control fix that? Secondly, this goes back to one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago, in that the tactics that American police are utilizing with the no-knock raids are, we're going to slowly but surely train our criminals to kick in the door and yell police. Well, that's exactly what this fella did. Not exactly, hyperbole there, but by painting up his vehicle to look like a squad car, and by dressing the part, he got around the travel restrictions and everything that they had in place. And, so what if he wouldn't have had a gun? What stops him from driving around like this, sees a person out walking in whatever limited amount that they were allowed to get out, confronts this person as a police officer, and once he gets within arm's reach, guts him like a fish with a nice, short knife.
I mean, we've had police impersonations here in the States.
Club him over the head. Nothing would have prevented that. Now, it maybe wouldn't have happened all at once, But legitimately, as Randall said, somebody who puts their mind to killing will find a way. And unfortunately, our neighbors to the north aren't seeing that. Once again, it's funny though how two people will look at the same facts and draw vastly different conclusions. When I feel safe in saying when Elias sees a shooting happen in the United States in a gun-free zone, both of us would say this is proof positive that gun-free zones are just something that a criminal recognizes as a soft target. But an anti-gunner says, oh, this is proof positive that we need more gun laws. And I don't understand how we can look at that same facts. I mean, even Everytown or Mom's Demand, I don't remember which one it was, we talked a couple months ago that they want to change the definition of gun-free zones because the current statistics show that gun-free zones are killing grounds if an active shooter is going to decide to, if a person decides they're going to be an active shooter, they're going to, unfortunately, logically, I mean, it is logical. It's not logical to decide that you're going to go out and become a mass murderer. I'm not saying that's logical. But if that's a decision that you have made, it's logical to go to a target-rich environment where you don't have to worry about return fire for 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
Okay, it's a twisted logic. I'm not saying that it's a mentally healthy thing, but the unhealthy part is that, coming over the hump of saying I'm going to go out and be a mass murderer today. After that, it's kind of... I mean, after that, it's just 1 + 1 is 2. And so...
Right.
Yeah, anyway, unfortunately, and again, my heart goes out to the families of these minimum of 22 victims. In the article that I just linked, there was a young man who was talking about his grandparents lived in that area. Their home has been torched, and at this point, he has not heard from them since last weekend, and their remains haven't been identified or anything, so it's very possible that they are dead in the rubble of their home. I mean, and that's unfortunate. So, as sensitively as I can approach this situation, more gun laws would not necessarily, they won't prevent violence. It may prevent violence committed with firearms, but it won't prevent violence because we as a whole are a sick and broken people, humans, and that goes, I'm sorry, to me, I look at the overall human condition and that just disproves evolution by itself, because evolution says things are going to get better because we are becoming better organisms, and the only thing that we've gotten better at as a people is finding ways to hurt each other. So and feel free to tell me that I'm an ignorant creationist, and that's fine too. Any of you guys who've been watching the channel very long know that I'm unabashedly Christian, and you have the right to believe whatever you want to believe, and I'm fine with that. And that's just where it is. So, anyway, and then the one way that I want to bring that back to the United States, because we're looking at going back to this fella who was impersonating an officer, which ties back to a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the militarization. And again, last week, my standalone video, I just pulled that out from the live stream. So if you want to go back and just watch that, you can either go watch the whole 2.5 hour live stream, or you can watch the 40-minute condensed version that I uploaded. It depends on what you're wanting, because we talked about a lot of things. That was a long
was a
show. It
long
was a
show,
very
yeah.
impassioned
Yeah.
show. But I knew
Yeah.
a lot of
It was
people
good,
were
though.
really interested in the militarization. And anyway, we talked about in Maryland last month, young man and his girlfriend were killed by a SWAT team serving a no-knock raid. They were shot from, the shots originated from outside the home when they were both in the bed. So I still say that screams execution. My understanding is that there are officers who have wanted to make a statement and were told.
That's a home invasion. That's a
So
that's a murder.
anyway, Firearms Policy Coalition has reached out for official documentation and has been denied
Good.
access. So there are lawsuits underway. Firearms Policy Coalition is trying to get to the heart of Duncan Limp's
Good.
story. Families of both Duncan and his girlfriend are suing police departments. Also good.
Good.
Once again,
We need more cases like that to be going to the courts.
yeah, because whether or not you agree with the concept of a no-knock raid executed on the right address, and I don't, but even a person who would agree that that's okay, when it's executed at the wrong address, like what happened in Louisville, yeah, there should be no kind of protection.
Right. No, those should be held accountable. The officers themselves and the department and the city should be held accountable for what happened.
So, and if you guys are interested in hearing more about the history and what the militarization looks like, Elias, Little Birdie, told me that an upcoming Liberty Review episode is all about that.
Yes, here in the next few days. I finished recording it earlier today. Just going to clean up the audio and we'll get it out there. And some of the things we're talking about is definitely the militarization of police. I kind of expanded more on what we talked about a couple weeks ago. And actually, I talked a little bit about the Michigan thing and stuff like that.
Excellent.
And consent of the governed in there. And if you guys want to catch it, I'll make sure that he shares it somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I
But
will.
this will be out in the next couple. This will be out in like the next day or two. I'm gonna try to get it out tomorrow. We'll see if that happens.
I will absolutely share, probably update my Instagram bio link, because I'm not big enough to be able to do the cool, swipe up stories and stuff. I'll share the link on Facebook, and you guys can make sure to check it out, libertyreview1776.com. I did go looking. At one point, I was subscribed through Spotify, and I can't find it in Spotify now. But as soon as that uploads, I'm sure that your website will have Spotify links and stuff. So,
I will say that for anybody who was paying attention a few weeks ago, I did work on an episode for talking more about congressional bills and how things get done, and I did do that. I don't really like the way it was done, especially towards the tail end. So I'm actually preempting myself and putting this episode first while I go rework that episode. So anybody who was interested or needed a way to fall asleep one night, that's still coming. I just want to redo it because I don't like the way that I did it in the first place. So I kind of preempted myself so I could re-record that one,
right,
to be a little bit better. So
Randall, I fully agree with that. I think that we mentioned that 2 weeks ago. And I said that my only fault with the fella in Louisville was the fact that his training didn't put it in the position where now the police are complaining about a dead police officer, because that was an armed home invasion. And my intention is I will stop the threat.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about it, I won't go into it right now because there'd be no reason to come listen to the episode. I do actually go and talk about a few cases that have worked their way through the court system having to do with exactly that, of cops being shot at. And I'll say for the most part, juries will either not indict or they'll find not guilty. But Go listen to it, and I'll talk a little bit more about it.
Poor Conservative, that is Liberty Review 1776.
Oh, you're typing it? Okay.
Yeah, 1776, if I spelled everything right, .com. Of course, that didn't turn into a link because YouTube hates us. That's okay. And you know, one thing...
It tagged me, though.
That's awesome. So, I was talking with one of my coworkers, and by and large, we get along really well. We go to the gun range all the time. He calls me a dirty communist because I own an AK, and then he calls me an anarchist, and it's a good time. But
You're only a little bit.
I think that it's mostly in jest. Anyway, and we were talking. The thing is that there's never a reason to not knock on the door and identify yourself. If you're that worried that it's a dangerous location, they make these really awesome ballistic shields that you can reach around and knock on the door. You know, if you're hunkered behind that shield, it's a level 4 shield. If they're shooting black tip 30-06 from the other side of the door, it's going to stop a couple of rounds. And by that point, look, man, if you knock on the door, you say, police, we have a warrant, open up, and their response is to shoot through the door, as a police officer, I fully back you shooting back through the door. I mean, that does violate the whole know your target and what's beyond it, but when there's bullets coming at you...
Right, exactly. That's the laws kind of, the rules kind of, they're guidelines.
Right. So, anyway...
Sometimes you got to violate the guidelines.
Anyway, we're not going to rehash that whole thing, but... No.
Just go listen to the episode.
Randall, I fully agree with you. Poor Conservative. Yep. Yeah, I was playing devil's advocate. I don't think no knock raids are the answer. We talked for an hour and a half just on the militarization. An hour and 15 minutes out of the 2.5 hour episode. So, and you came back and watched the replay if I remember right. So, anyway, I think that was we've covered the big headlines that I remember seeing this week, with the exception of, I just touched on it earlier in the episode. Those of you guys who are on Facebook, you need to go through, or you should go through, I guess you don't need to, it's a free country, you do what you want, I'm not your real dad. But you might go through the Facebook contact form, if you can find it, because they're not super user-friendly. And read them the Riot Act about, if you're not following Mr. Guns and Gear, number one, right now, you can't follow Mr. Guns and Gear on Facebook because they took down his page. And that's the second time that they've taken down his page in the last few months. I can't put an exact number on that. The first time, he shares deals that he finds. Whether it's magazines, whether it's ammunition, whether it's a good deal on firearm holsters, whatever it is, Guns and Gear, he shares the deals he finds. Well, Facebook took down his page a few months ago for selling firearm, or selling, what do they call it, restricted items. Now, he's not selling any of it, but whatever. Anyway, earlier this week, he shared footage from the rally in South Carolina to get the state open back up. And Facebook has taken down his page as a community violation for sharing dangerous information about the coronavirus or some garbage like that. Fact of the matter is, Facebook is a private entity, and just like YouTube has the right to yank this stream right this second because they are a private platform, Facebook has the right to shut down any page they want to. We don't have to like that. They're not the government. They have no requirement to abide by the Bill of Rights or any individual state's constitution. If you think about it, that's the reason why in any dystopian future film or book, if the government is the one still in charge, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. But most of them, the government has been bought out by a corporation,
Yep.
and a private corporation is running things, and that's maybe closer to something that could really happen and a little scarier. Regardless, Facebook is within their rights as a company to deplatform anybody they want. That doesn't make it right.
And you certainly should, as users,
So,
make the voice known.
So-
make the
anyway, I would highly recommend a couple things. One, if you follow Mr. Guns and Gear's Facebook page, right now that's down. He is using his wife's Mrs. Guns and Gear page, so you should definitely like and follow Mrs. Guns and Gear to get those deals and stuff. And number two, I would highly recommend, in the spirit of Second Amendment supporters supporting each other, reach out and complain to Facebook and lobby that they reinstate Mike's page. So
I just ask one thing: please don't go in there and say that you're violating the First Amendment,
right,
because they're not. That's all.
Right, because the government shall make no law affecting the press, or however it's actually worded.
Yeah,
right.
Facebook can make all the laws they want affecting their systems. So don't go in there with that, because I guarantee you, as soon as they read that, they immediately dismiss the email.
So anyway, there you go. Mike seems like a decent enough fella. Guys I know who have talked to him say that he truly is as genuine as what he presents. I haven't met him. I would love to be able to one day, but regardless, I haven't seen. There was one thing on Instagram that I think he may have gone to bat for somebody that violated the community's trust, and he, whatever. Anyhow, that's my recommendation. Do with it what you will. Yeah, that gets through the headlines that I have found for the week. If you guys know of a situation that I should have covered and you want to dump it in the chat real quick, there's a chance that I know what you're talking about and just forgot it. Or there's a chance that we'll have to add it to the docket for next week. Definitely appreciate Warsaw Patriot sent me a lot of links about the Duncan Limp situation. So, yeah, guys, if you guys, once again, you see something that is really big, constitutional consideration worthy news, mostly we're going to focus on our Second Amendment rights, but kind of the whole Bill of Rights builds together. So feel free to hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, or email me at tacticalreview@protonmail.com, and just let me know any show ideas that you guys have. If it's an accessory that you'd like to see tested or whatever, I would love to do what I can to get you guys information on things. I might find out that something is a hidden gem. I might find out that something is just the piece of junk that it looks to be, and the fact of the matter is that right now, just with the situation being what it is, with our most recent big import from China, I feel a little funny with the whole basis of my channel, but anyway, do appreciate everything that you guys, all the support that you guys give the channel. So if you'd like to show your support out while you're out and about, of course you can head over to the Teespring store and pick you up some channel t-shirts. And once again, I appreciate Poor Conservative for the big channel logo that he gave us there. If you're not following over on social media, you can do that. Tactical Review 2019. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And yeah, and once again, head over to Facebook and look up Liberty Review 1776. Give Elias a like and a follow on Facebook, and then bookmark libertyreview1776.com so that you can see when he uploads new podcast episodes. Brownies, what about camera equipment review? Boy, I think that's a little bit out of the channel's budget. Let me...
Does anybody want to send him a camera?
Oh, yeah, I'd be more than happy.
If anybody wants to donate a camera to him, I'm sure he won't mind.
Guys, all of my film, besides my live streams, are shot on this, like, 10-year-old Canon Vixia. And I'm gonna be honest, I've been super happy with this. You can still get it, but it's been discontinued, and it's powered on for some reason. That's, whatever. I was very surprised to find out that it actually functions. I threw a 128 gig micro SD card in it with an SD adapter. I was like, there's no way that this 10-year-old camera is going to work with anything bigger than like a 32 gig, and it works fine. And it does full HD, and my computer would just die if I tried to upgrade to 4K. So, yeah. Anyway, so brownies. Now I may go through like my studio lights. Pretty good budget option there. I may go through one day and kind of talk about some of the stuff that I'm using as I build things up. I'm still doing some stuff like slip shot. I've just got this cheap little lapel mic, and I record to the voice recorder on my cell phone, and then mix the audio in and things like that. But I might go through that if that's something that you guys are interested in. Yeah. The government powered on my camera to spy on me.
That's why I laughed a minute ago, because I saw him pop up with that.
Do I have a ring light? I do not. I use LED panels is what I'm using for my studio lighting. I found 2 panels, came with stands and everything, was like 130 shipped on Amazon. So once the channel, here we go, just another reason to help me push to 1,000 subs, I can then set up the like an Amazon. I can do an Amazon store where I can put my recommended products and stuff in there. I at one point had set up an influencer account, and it turns out that when you don't have 1,000 subs on YouTube, you're not an influencer yet. So, is what it is. Yeah, correct. Correct. It just, until you hit 1,000 subs on a platform, you're kind of worthless. So
I think I have 3 right now.
Affiliate marketing. Thank you. Yeah, an affiliate. And the thing is that I know that at that point, then if you click through the affiliate link, there's a commission earned and all that. And honestly, I would almost just as soon that you guys use Amazon Smile and support a more worthy cause like Gun Owners of America. I mean, I'll probably set up an affiliate store, like I said, if nothing else, just to have a good collection to say, hey, this is the stuff I'm using, this is stuff I bought off of Amazon and I really like it. And then, if I get a little commission off that, cool. And if you guys support Gun Owners or Firearm Policy Coalition or whatever, I got the Rona. Anyway, even better. So, alrighty, Elias, I think that's kind of a wrap. What do you think? Not seeing anything else in chat, so
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
Absolutely.
About as good of a time as
Thanks
ever.
so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you guys' patronage. Until next time, shoot straight, stay safe.